see, this is 2013, so this is from like 5 years ago. It's not that old of a prompt. The question isn't nuts. The passage, I think, is fairly easy to follow along with. What kind of like maybe the Coca-Cola letters that we were looking at, I think sometimes the strategies that you would use, you might not be sure what they are off the top of your head. And so that's part of us going over stuff today. Passage below is from Last Child in the Woods, 2008 by Richard Louv. Just like saying Louv. Read the passage carefully, then in a well-developed essay, analyze the rhetorical strategies Louv uses to develop his argument about the separation between people and nature. Supports your analysis with specific references to the text. So, what does it tell us our argument has to be? Sort of, at least. Where are we going?
On the separation, it's going to be at least somewhat about the separation between people and nature.
And yeah, and I think that's a good way of putting it, at least something about the separation between people and nature. We don't really know what his argument is yet about the separation between people and nature. We hope it's beyond like a window. People, nature. People, nature separated. But we don't know if he's taking a look at the effects, the causes, whatever that case may be. So that's something that moving forward as we read through it, we want to try to be able to kind of figure out what is his point about the separation. Because it's going to be too simplistic to simply go, there's a difference between people and nature, and leave it at that. There has to be something that's at least a little bit more complex about it. We're going to read the passage. I'll read it. Follow along and like just kind of start starring, underlining things that jump out. Doesn't mean you got a rhetorical device in mind, but you're starting to see, okay, this might be some of his points about that separation between people and nature. Researchers at the State University of New York at Buffalo are experimenting with genetic technology through which they can choose the colors that appear on butterfly wings. We could make our own butterflies. Pick a wing color.
Purple and green.
Maroon.
Wow, oh my god.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I'm the maroon guy. It's alright.
Allison and I have telepathy.
The announcement of this in 2002 led writer Matt Richtel to conjure a brave new advertising medium. You thought it was going to be Brave New World, but it's not. A brave new advertising medium. There are countless possibilities for moving ads out of the virtual world and into the real one. Sponsorship-wise, it's time for nature to carry its weight. So we could genetically modify butterflies to like have guys go on them. Monticello.
It's
Cool.
alone.
Advertisers already stamp their messages into the wet sands of public beaches. Cash-strapped municipalities hope corporations agree to affix their company logo on parks in exchange for dollars to keep public spaces maintained. The sheer popularity of simulating nature or using nature as ad space demands that we acknowledge, even respect, their cultural importance, suggests Richtel. Culturally important, yes, but the logical extension of synthetic nature is the irrelevance of true nature, the certainty that it's not even worth looking at. True, our experience of natural landscape often occurs within an automobile looking out, as Elaine Brooks said. But now, even that visual connection is optional. A friend of mine was shopping for a new luxury car to celebrate her half-century of survival in the material world. I guess that's a euphemism for saying 50th century survival.
Congratulations.
It's not a good way of going.
Congratulations. You're in a midlife crisis.
Happy birthday, Mom. You survived.
Congratulations, you're old.
Yeah. She settled on a Mercedes SUV with local positioning system. Just tap in your destination, the vehicle not only provides a map on the dashboard screen, but talks you there. But she knew where to draw the line. The salesman's jaw dropped when I said I didn't want a backseat television monitor for my daughter, she told me. He almost refused to let me leave the dealership until he could understand why. Rear seat and in-dash multimedia entertainment products, as they are called, are quickly becoming the hottest add-on since rear view mirror fuzzy dice. The target market, parents who will pay a premium for a little backseat piece. Sales are brisk, the prices are falling. Some systems include wireless infrared connected headsets. The children can watch Sesame Street or play Grand Theft Auto on the PlayStation without bothering the driver.
Yeah, that never happens. That never, ever,
Sesame Street
ever
has
happens.
GTA.
That's quite a range.
Hey, you can do both. You can do both.
Elmo likes to get old. Why do so many Americans? Hey, listen. Why Why do so many Americans say that they want their children to watch less TV, yet continue to expand the opportunities for them to watch it? More important, why do so many people no longer consider the physical world worth watching? The high-waist edges may not be postcard perfect, but for a century, children's early understanding of how cities and nature fit together was gained from the back seat. The empty farmhouse at the edge of the subdivision, the variety of architecture here and there, the woods and fields and water beyond the seamy edges, all that was and still is available to AI. This was the landscape that we watched as children. It was our drive-by movie. Perhaps we'll someday tell our grandchildren stories about our version of the 19th century Conestoga wagon. You did what? They'll ask. Yes, we'll say, it's true. We actually looked out the car window. In our youthful boredom, we used our fingers to draw pictures on fogged glass as we watched telephone poles stick by. We saw birds on the wires and combines in the fields. We were fascinated with roadkill, and we counted cows and horses and coyotes and shaving cream signs. We stared with a kind of reverence at the horizon as thunderheads and dancing rain moved with us. We held our little plastic cars against the glass and pretended the day too were racing towards some unknown destination. We considered the past and dreamed of the future and watched it all go by in the blink of an eye. Mind blowing. So, we're dealing, and again, not yet worried about devices, but we're talking about something with the separation between people and nature. So what is it about the separation between people and nature that this guy is starting to take a look at? What might be some elements, some angles to the argument? Simply not going, there is a separation, but something about it. Cause of it, severity, those could be like, for example, possibilities to look at.
He's supposed to say the cause of it is from like technology and like all the advancements that are.
Okay, so technology, and I don't want to necessarily say it has to be the sole cause, but certainly contributed to it, caused or contributed to the separation. I think you could certainly write a whole entire rhetorical analysis dealing with that. You know, coming up with rhetorical devices supports the idea that technology caused the divide, the separation between people and nature. Nothing wrong with Emma's option whatsoever. I think it'd be good. Any others where, and this is not problematic of what Emma did, all of her examples, they do have to go back over to supporting technology. Are there any other wordings or ideas you want to throw out where maybe you're not, where you don't have to be so focused on technology? Not that this is a problem, just giving options.
That separation between people and nature is bad.
Thanks.
I know we want to use bad, but
Problematic.
Very bad.
so
I think we should use problematic.
Kind of bad.
Maybe.
Vaguely
Troubling.
I actually like bad.
so problems, troubles, issues could exist with this separation. Yeah. So there's definitely a negative connotation. Should not have written that in that color. Oh well. Kobe, do you have another one? I know your hand went up, so.
Oh yeah, I was looking over here and I was just saying like because of that separation, we're more focused on like the miraclistic side of things rather than like the natural beauty thing.
Okay. So shift in focus from nature to materialism. Okay, that'd be fine. And I mean, you could even, if you wanted to, like pull a line, I would say coming from the passage. I think if you were looking for a place where he essentially kind of sums up his idea, it would be a little too. Oops.
I'd love to see one.
That would be so.
Synthetic nature is the irrelevance of true nature, and it's not worth looking at. That could be an idea that you kind of take a look at the as a topic, where that separation has essentially caused nature to become irrelevant. all those would be fine. And there certainly would be other options. But they would be better than simply going, Louvre writes his argument about the separation between people and nature. Now we have at least an angle that's taking place. Remember, don't turn this into a DRQ, don't fight the prompt. It's still going to be rhetorical analysis. You don't want to do the thing where you explain this is why he's right, this is why he's wrong. Sometimes folks, and this is more happens with an AP exam, although it can happen with independent reading essays, I don't really like the way the prompt's worded. I'm going to tweak it. But you can't. It's the prompt. You have to answer it in that regard. So don't try to change any of that stuff. So for any of these arguments, at least something that's going to deal with that emphasizing that separation, where do you see him now making that argument about the separation? Again, you don't have to go, here's irony, here's imagery. But where does he start to kind of emphasize those things?
You look at like when he starts talking about from backseat multimedia entertainment products
Okay.
and compares them to the telephone poles and whatnot.
So, all right. So, would you say starting down here?
40 to 45.
Okay. Right here, and then going down to all that stuff that they would actually start watching. Okay. Nature kind of down here when we actually did watch stuff. More of that whole materialism, consumerism, technology up here. All right. Other places where he's emphasizing separation.
Like telling, with line 60 and on, like telling his, is this a guy or girl? Or does it not say?
Your author is Richard.
Richard, yeah, Richard Liu.
I'm going out on a limb.
Telling his kids that what he used to do in the cars, and they would literally just look out the window, and like that they would find that completely insane.
What are some ways that you folks pass the time in the automobile without using technology?
I slap my
Sing
brother
along
a
to
lot.
songs.
I talk.
Radio's technology.
People
Isolation.
We could argue everything's going to be technology, but singing along, so it could be like songs and whatnot, looking out the window, reading a book,
Also.
drive.
The
Like
alphabet
the thing
game.
that you were driving.
The alphabet game?
Like, yeah, the license plate.
Now,
actually
Oh, wait, yeah,
driving.
like when your parents would let you, like, sit in their lap and, like,
I don't think any parent would.
I'm not doing that, but maybe yours did, that's fine. Certainly, kids will mimic, like the whole driving thing, so watch mom, dad, brother, whatever driving, so they'll kind of go through the same thing. Some of you played license plate games. Some of you will do alphabet where, you gotta find a letter from, in A, B, C, D, E order, then you get the Q and you get stuck. Some of you would do, pardon?
Best of 99 rock, paper, scissors.
That's me and my brother did it.
That's what me and him.
And then you would lose count around like 64.
Oh yeah, I get you off. You're like 30.
Anyone remember from Friday what makes Jordan happy? Jordan said Hot Wheels brought him happiness.
Hot Wheels.
People had mentions little plastic cars. People would have their toy cars in the car ride with you. Anyone ever play Cows in Cemeteries?
yeah.
What?
You.
What is that?
Michael?
It's a great way to pass the time.
What is it?
Pass the cows, you count the cows, and you pass the cemetery, all your cows die. But on your side of the
Yep.
top.
So if Allie's sitting on the left side and I'm sitting on the right, she can't look out my window. I can't look out her window.
Cool.
What you do start, if you make the repeated trip, you remember where the final cemetery is, so you avoid that side, because then all Allie's cows are going to go down.
I like the style.
I Spy, play. And then mentions even on here, drawing pictures on the glass. And then mom or dad or someone would yell at you because then there's going to be fingerprints left along the glass and whatnot. True.
We played license.
I'm not going to ask about your infatuations with roadkill, but I'm sure some of you might have it. How else? Other ways, authors, you can start to see emphasizing points, separation.
When he is describing the car.
The new one,
Yeah.
so where the friend is buying the,
Yeah.
the luxury SUV. Okay. Grace, did you have a hand up too?
Oh no.
Anything else? about this paragraph? The why do so many Americans?
Yeah, I like that.
What about it though?
I like how it shows something as simple as looking out a car window teaches so much to kids, and how that was like their first sense of life.
So the farmhouse, the architecture, that stuff.
Pretty sure.
Well, depending upon where you're going, the whole idea, especially I'd say with something more like this, if you're going in a car and it's longer trip where you are going to be like, hey, turn out the window and whatnot. I think part of it is the whole idea is you're seeing something beyond the realm that you're comfortable with. So if you're driving from here to North Dakota, who knows why you're going to North Dakota, but you'll certainly see things that you wouldn't be used to seeing in Ross, McCandless, Westview, even someplace like New Kensington, Lower Borough, where you're getting a little bit of a wider perspective of things that would be taking place. All right, so we find different places where, all right, I see what he's doing, or at least I see examples that he's trying to bring in. Now, whether it's something that we've already highlighted or something that we haven't touched on yet, what would be specific devices that we can now call attention to that are getting used? Oh, people. Where at? I think I know where you mean, but part that we're just taking a look at. And not necessarily going to be hitting every single one, but yeah, up here at the top. Why do so many people want their children to watch less TV, but we give them more opportunities to watch? Why are we considering a physical world worth watching? Rhetorical question, we know you're not meant to give an exact answer, but it's certainly forcing people to at least think about the issue. I would say within that same paragraph, there's also something from a syntactic standpoint that he starts to do. Any ideas for syntax? Got rhetorical questions.
No,
I don't know what you
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong paragraph. Bottom paragraph. In our useful boredom, we used our fingers to draw pictures. We saw the birds on the wires and the combines. We were fascinated with roadkill. We counted cows and horses. You have that repetition of we in the last paragraph. And you could go with anaphora. You could call it repetition. You could even argue that the fact that you're using the collective pronoun of we, that it's not just Richard going, I did this, I did this, I did this, therefore so should you, but that multiple people, so in or we, our, we gets used multiple times throughout, that there's kind of some a collective mindset to this, that it wasn't just one group. There was something I was looking at in this paragraph, but it wasn't syntactic for the rhetorical question. I think towards the end you could argue he does something.
I don't know what you're thinking, but like kind of like a metaphor when they call it their drive-by movie.
Mm-hmm. And even like, this was the landscape that we watched as children. It was our drive-by movie, not what they're watching as children now, where the DVD menu comes up. So you could go metaphor. Some might call it an analogy because they're just not thinking of the term metaphor for whatever case. But you have that comparison that would be occurring. I don't think this is done on purpose, because certainly he's not writing it in the sense of an AP prompt, but I think if you look side by side what's happening, you get a nice little contrast. This is the landscape that we watched. It was our drive-by movie, and then right over here you have synthetic nature is the irrelevance of quote-unquote true nature. So this is what we watch, the real stuff, whereas what they're watching is this whole synthetic idea. I think you could even argue that synthetic nature in itself as a term is
Negative.
definitely has a negative connotation, but so far as device, there's a couple things. You could go oxymoron for synthetic and natural. Some might say paradox for the statement. They're juxtaposing ideas, contradictory. Some might even go ironic. So all within this area, you have a lot of options that would be there. Irony, oxymoron, juxtaposition. And certainly even what's happening earlier in that paragraph, because what are we looking to do to true nature to even kind of make it synthetic? Let's put those ads, whether it be on beaches, butterfly wings, let's make our own nature, make our own purple wings that we're going to put on butterflies, or Jake's fluorescent orange, whatever the case may be. Sean, you were talking about the things that you could see, architecture, farmhouse, all that stuff around line 50. I'd say maybe from here on down, then mentioning cows, horses, coyotes, shaving cream signs, the we did this, the we did that. Tone-wise, what's kind of happening?
It's like nostalgic.
Yeah, you could say nostalgic tone. And the nice thing with tone, as comparison to diction, diction focuses you to pick an individual word. Tone gives you a little bit more freedom to kind of take some phrasing as to how it creates that overall emotion. So yeah, nostalgic tone. So we got nostalgic tone. We have repetition, anaphora, metaphor, rhetorical questions, irony, oxymoron, juxtaposition.
Did you say like anecdotes?
For where?
The story about her friend.
That's where I was. His friend. Yeah, anecdote. Short, little, simple story. It's still a rhetorical device because you're including that story to reinforce your idea. Now, from a quoting standpoint, you decide to go with anecdote. Do you have to quote that whole entire thing? By no means, no. But you can still make reference to the anecdote about the friend who's buying the SUV who has survived a half century.
Is this like a full essay? Like we need to do? You're told you guys there's 3 examples for each, or like there's only 1 example per anecdote, really?
It's-
the same story?
It's a typing essay, but it has more of a TWA feel to it. There's no way you're going to get 3 examples of anecdote. If you were to say there's 3 examples of anaphora, it's because you're using the same word, multiple times. So primarily, most of us, it'll probably be 1 main example for each part. So an example of irony, an example of anaphora, an example of anecdote. The key is you want to make sure and there's not like 3 that I want you to specifically pick, but you want to pick the 3 that you think best get that idea across. You might make reference, like let's say you do something with the anecdote, so you like do a quote unquote of the little story. It doesn't mean you're going to quote the whole entire thing. You still might make reference to how that kind of ties in with synthetic nature, but it's not that every other example therefore has to be an anecdote along with it. In independent reading essays, a lot of folks are doing a good job. Let's say you're doing a rhetorical device, a quoted symbolism or something like that, or whatever the case may be, imagery. They had another quote that didn't have the rhetorical device, but it was emphasizing how that first example matched up with the overall argument. That is perfectly fine. But I would say for an AP exam, TWA, Allie, when you're dealing with a passage of this length, you're probably getting like 1 main example for each device that you use.
Would it be better, like, if, so, for, like, a TWA, if we had, like, 2 good examples for one instead of doing 3 total, like, do 2 for 2?
It's all going to, I know this is a terrible way to answer, it's all going to depend on the prompt. Because you might have some passages where, yes, there are 2 separate metaphors that I could write about, but there only might be 1 example of illusion, 1 example of personification.
As long as you have, like, more than 1 device and at least, like, a solid
As
example.
long as you can really explain why that device is so critical to the argument, you are fine. And that, I would say that would be the main thing. What best helps this author get the point across? By no means I'm not trying to make you pick anecdote and nostalgic tone. I'm picking them because they're on the board right now, and also they're pretty large paragraphs, or at least large segments. So those would be 2 that I would really kind of consider because he is devoting so much time and energy to it. Now, I could see, Kobe said anaphora, Byron said nostalgic tone. They're both still looking at significant elements. Maybe Lizzie's looking at the imagery that's presented in that paragraph. That would be fun. Let's say I'll throw imagery up here as well. I don't think it would be a good idea to write about nostalgic tone, imagery, and anaphora. Because I'm really only now writing about the last 15 lines. And it wouldn't be much different than me going, hey, don't pull all your quotes from the same chapter within the book. You're really only looking at the same part. So ideally, you're able to get devices that encompass the whole entire passage. So maybe someone starts off with the irony of synthetic nature, moves into anecdote, takes a look at the anaphora. That could all be well and good. What also you want to keep in mind, which of the arguments of these four or whatever else are you going with, and you might decide, you know what, I'm doing technology that Emma mentioned. Maybe the, I don't know, maybe imagery is just not going to work quite as well as I was hoping it would, as what it might do for the last one. So those would all be kind of things that you'll take into consideration with it. The hope would be that for tomorrow on your brainstorming sheet, you know what you want your argument to be. You know what you want your devices to be. You might not know word for word what your quoted examples are going to be, but at least you know like your line numbers roughly that you are going to pull from so that you can kind of see the semblance of how that thing's going to take shape. It's not a hard prompt to understand. It's not a hard passage to understand. But again, you're just not getting fiction, imagery, details, all that stuff in your face, I think, the way that you do sometimes with some other prompts. So it's just kind of thinking about it. And I would say coming up with that argument is really the important part. Because if you just were to write about, hey, this is how there's separation between people and nature, probably just don't have enough bite to the argument for that to work. Any questions?
So when is it?
So tomorrow, you're not giving that to me.
Oh,
but
okay. This
that
is
would
just
be your, I would think about it like a rough draft outline, so
Okay.
that you're not staring at the front going, what am I doing? What
Okay.
am I doing?
So just fill that out just for our own benefit, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
Tomorrow, you'll grab a laptop, I'll go over the guideline sheet, your essay, and it kind of has this mentioned on Friday on the weekly syllabus. Your essay is going to be worth 2 grades. You're going to get an essay grade for the score that Revision Assistant gives you. And remember, you can revise as often as you want. So you could, like, literally have 50 drafts until you get the grade that you want. You're going to get a quiz grade then that is going to be based on the sentence structure. So it's kind of like a split grade. One will be a writing, one will be a quiz. So this will be technically your first essay and your first quiz for second semester. And then Monday, you'll have a participation grade for your reading check quiz. So at least after the first week, you got some points in all 3 categories. So grades can kind of become normal.
If we weren't here for the sentence structure lesson, is that on Google Classroom?
So Google Classroom recorded lessons would be December the 19th. I'll also give you another sheet of paper tomorrow that they got the day that we did the lesson.
What's the OLAC?
Online. Online class. So you can have literal Mr. Kane and virtual Mr. Kane.
I know that's why I'm worried.